I always use a light meter. I went to school for it, so it's, with teachers that have it. I like a light meter. It's accurate. It gives me that setting all the time. At ISO 100 is the lowest I can set on this Seconic meter. I'm getting 1,000 of a shutter speed at f2, and that's in the ship. I'm going to shoot Patrick out there. It's going to be brighter. You guys can still hear me, right? You guys can stay there. 1,000 f4 and 6/10. Right? 2.8 to 5/10. 2.8 at 2,000. I took the liberty earlier to come here and see what the light was like. I know that if I shoot in that direction, and that's kind of the direction I want, that 2,000 is going to give me a blue saturated sky along with some nice definitions in the clouds. I think Heisler showed this last night. If you were at the sound studio, right? We talked about that one shot where, was that you against the column? Right? Right. He's been, that's right. So I think you kind of alluded to what you're going to happen, right? If I shoot this without putting in a high-speed sync, I can get a perfect exposure on Patrick, but all that detail in the background is going to be blown out. So that's the whole point of high-speed sync. Now there's another method that you can use, and you can use this in conjunction, and that is using a variable density filter on your lens. That'll also help reduce light coming through. I don't employ that method, mainly because most variable density filters are really dark. And I have a hard time using it and using through the viewfinder, right? You also have to make sure that if you're using a variable density filter, that either you have calculated what the filter factor is prior to using it, or take your meter reading. If you don't have a handheld and you're using the in-camera meter, you have to use that filter on the lens before you meter, so that you get that filter factor already built in. Right? So, okay. Anybody have any questions? We're moving on. I'm using the FJ400, which is a wireless battery-operated strobe, 400 watt seconds. I could use a 200, but one of the limitations of using high-speed sync is that it consumes more power. So I'm using the 400 watt second system because of that reason.
Is that because the flash actually has to burst several times?
That's correct. Yeah.
Milliseconds?
Mark. Yeah, Marcus asked, is that because of the way the high-speed sync works? So what's happening is, and you won't see this with the naked eye, because we can't catch that speed, but what's happening when you're actually taking a photograph in high-speed sync is there's a stroboscopic effect that's occurring with the flash. So it's bursting very quickly. To the naked eye, it looks like a single pop. And because of that, because it's bursting and recycling and bursting and recycling and bursting and recycling, it's consuming a lot more power. So oftentimes when someone says, what should I get? Should I get the 400? Should I get the 200? My first question is, what are you taking pictures of? Are you going to be doing this? Because if you're doing this, I'm saying the 400. If you're taking pictures with a speed light or a 200 in a normal capacity, in normal sync mode, 200 watts that can be plenty of light, you know. So that's why I'm using the 400 watts. I have a Sony A7 III, and I'm using the FJX3M trigger, which is part of this system. So it's all wireless, right? So let's do some camera settings, right? That's important. I set my meter to 100. I set my camera to 100. I'm getting 2,000 at 2.8 out there, so that's where we're going to start. I'll meter again very quickly. So what you want to do with high-speed sync, first and foremost, is establish your ambient exposure first. That's critical, because that's going to tell you what that background is going to look like. Now, if you don't have a light meter, your reflective light meter in the camera will be fine. If you're using super wide-angle lens, like 14 or 18 or 28, you may need to approach your subject, so be careful, because if you have it like on center weight averaging, there's a variety of things that are happening here. There's darkness in the trees, there's light in the sky, so, but you can use that, obviously. Establish your ambient exposure first, and then meter for your light. So I'm gonna go ahead and set my shutter speed to 2000. Now, this is an important note because this is more of a technical thing. My camera, like most cameras on the marketplace, when it reads a flash in the hot shoe, and this trigger reads as a flash in the hot shoe, will not allow me to set my shutter speed faster. You see here, I mean, probably can't see it, but 1/250th is the top. It won't let me set that because it's in normal sync mode. I need to put the trigger into high-speed sync, and then I'm able, you can see, I'm just going to show these people. See that? Yeah, man. Yeah. High-speed sync, it's the little H, the letter H. So, if you're a Nikon shooter or if you are a Fuji shooter, you have an additional step. In most of the camera systems, you have to go into the sync menu and set it to something called auto FP. FP as in focal point. Auto FP. If you're a Nikon or Fuji. If you don't do that, it doesn't matter that you set the trigger on high-speed sync. It won't let you do it. It's more of a safety feature. It's telling the camera, hey, I know what I'm doing, leave me alone. So, with the Sony systems and the Canon systems that I've used, I've not had to do that. Once I put the trigger in a high-speed sync mode, it's actively talking to the camera saying, hey, he's in high-speed sync, you can go above this top sync speed. Yeah.
Is it up to the camera or the trigger and light system?
Say again?
Is it up to like the camera or the trigger and light system if if it'll allow you to do high-speed sync?
Yeah, so almost all camera systems will allow you to do high-speed sync, so long as you tell it that you're doing high-speed sync, right? So since that's a part of what the system allows, right? The FJ wireless system allows you to do high-speed sync, setting a shutter speed, a top shutter speed of 1/8,000 a second. Once you tell the camera that's what you're doing, then the camera will allow you to set your shutter speed. That's why I say it's very important that this be put into high-speed sync mode, otherwise it will not.
So that's what tells the Sony.
Yeah.
Changing this is what tells the Sony you're doing high-speed sync. You don't have to set anything on the Sony?
Not on the Sony and the Canon systems, the trigger is talking to the camera. On the Nikon and the Fuji systems, like I said, there's one additional step. You have to go into the sync menu and tell it auto FP. In fact, they both use that same language, auto FP. So, yeah. Okay, and I'm not sure if you got a chance to see that earlier, but right now it's in rear curtain sync mode there.
Okay.
And here's my shutter speed. That's the top shutter speed. If I try to increase it,
Right.
it's not going to.
Right.
If I put this into high-speed sync mode, now I can do that, see?
Yep.
Right.
Got it.
So, for Sony and Canon users, you have it a little bit easier, but it's not that big a deal to go into the sync menu with your camera if you're a Fuji or Nikon shooter to get to that. Okay, so, I'm setting my aperture at f4, rather f2.8, excuse me, and then my shutter speed at 1/2000, ISO is at 100. I'm gonna balance to flash. I'm not gonna balance to daylight because the bulk of my subject will be pattern, and I want to make sure that the color is correct. Of course, most everybody shoots raw these days, so you can fix it in post. But,
I always thought flash was the same as daylight. It's not the same?
there's a slight difference.
Okay.
Yeah, and it varies on the model and it varies on the camera manufacturer.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, daylight on here is pretty cool. And so I use it in flash and I get it warm. So.
Quick question, not necessarily high-speed sync, but with the white balance, with setting it on flash. I know when I've used flash, like the background or like the face will look fine, but the background looks like a really weird color. So
Yeah,
is that the light set to a certain color? Can you allow it to do that?
So the light system is about 5,600 Kelvin, plus or minus 150 degrees Kelvin shift. What camera are you shooting? Yeah. So like I said, every camera manufacturer and every model within that camera manufacturer can have varying degrees. My experience shooting with the Sony a7 III is that when I shoot, if I set it to daylight in a high-speed sync mode, instead of setting it to flash, it tends to come out cool. The colors come out cool. So I think that's just something that you're going to have to kind of play with, and that's, you know, that's not a whole lot, right? Making a switch in your white balance is pretty quick and easy. But like I said, if you're shooting it in RAW, you could always make some post changes. But you have to kind of test your own camera system to see where you're at on that. The other thing too is that because high-speed sync is giving you these quick bursts of light, you are essentially operating your speed light or your strobe at the worst spot of color. The system is pretty accurate in its color. I say it's 5600 Kelvin, but there's a variation, and that variation is 150 degree Kelvin. Now, most people, unless you're really good at seeing color, can't see a degree of 150 Kelvin shift. However, in a high-speed sync mode, because you're doing this kind of quick, short burst of light, that you're at 150, and sometimes it'll even vary to almost 250 Kelvin shift. And a 250 Kelvin shift in color temperature, you'll see. So it's just something to be aware of when you're using high-speed sync. But again, the benefits far outweigh those few, you know, issues. Because now I'm able to go out and take a picture and get the skies I want. Okay. Any other questions before we ask Patrick to stand in the sun for a few minutes? In his wool hat, wool jacket, and jeans?
Just made it a little bit more challenging for Ruben. One thing I want to point out to some of you people weren't here when Ruben first made the announcement. We're doing a couple of quick shots.
Yep.
Then we're going back to the corporate partner area. Ruben's going to project the images up on the large screen to continue this presentation.
So if you didn't hear it over there, we're going to do the shots here, but then we're going to go back into the vendor area. I'm going to hook up the laptop and we'll see the images on those big screens. Because it's kind of impossible to shoot tethered out here and have you see. I mean, everybody's like squinting already, so. Yeah, so this is going to be pretty quick. And if you guys want to move in this direction, you are welcome to. I'm just saying we're going to be in the sun. I've got a 36-inch rapid box Octa, and I've got a set of H2 Pro bags. If you don't know what this is, these are not sandbags. They're water bladders. It's easier to get water. I can dump this and not take another 20 pounds with me. I fly a lot. So, and you can zip them together, you can buy them individually. So I'm using right. I think it's like $44 for one. Remember, you guys get a 20% discount for EDU. So, all right. If you want to follow me, come on. So, can everybody still hear me?
Yeah.
Excellent. So, couple of things. This is a terrible location. Terrible. But you guys often get put in situations where you don't choose where you're shooting, right? So it kind of fits perfect for this scheme. You know, I'm surrounded by buildings. So what we're going to do here is, one, I want the sun as a second light. So I'm keeping it essentially behind and above Patrick. Do me a favor and come a little bit this way. Yeah. Great. So then the other thing, of course, is where is that light direction going to come from? You know, the last couple of days we've been hearing some great presentations from Heisler and from McNally on light quality, light direction, and, you know, them talking more about the aesthetic, which I think is, you know, obviously very important. I'm more of a technician. You know, I'm looking at it from where is this going to work the best. So I'm thinking, can you take a look at me, Patrick? I mean, right now the light is pretty even on him. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to actually have the light to the left and come across. Do me a favor and just look straight ahead so I can see where this light's at. Good. Yeah, thank you.
I know that nobody likes to carry with sandbags, but you're crazy if you don't. And the first day you have to break a light, you'll carry a sandbag. I like the H2 Pro because I can get rid of it. It's easier to get water than it is sand, and I can pretty much fill that up anywhere. I'm just going to take one more reading, right? The sun has been something that's been moving. 2,000, 2.8, 9/10, almost F4, right? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do my ambient exposure. I've got a Zeiss Bodice 85-1.8, so it's not a problem to be able to shoot the 2.8. If you're limited in your aperture, let's say you got like an f4 lens, obviously you can apply the theory of reciprocity, but if that theory of reciprocity jacks up your shutter speed, don't forget you can always just double your ISO. Every time you double your ISO, you gain a stop of light. And going from 100 to 200 is no issue, as you guys well know, on these camera systems. All right, I think we're back in business here. Let me get a little bit closer to get more sky in the background. Now, if my metering was right, if my metering was right, I'm getting a pretty decent, but I want even more because I think what's been happening here is our clouds are going away. So, yeah, see, I'm already at an f4 now on 2,000. So if I want to stick to 2.8, I'm now at 4,000. So we're going to jack that shutter speed up to 4,000. At 2.8. And this is good because this is, again, falling in line so that you guys can see what you're going to be getting. Soft grass there. All right. Well, the reason why I wanted to go inside, there's no way to see anything out here, you know? Yeah. Yeah, it's better that way too.
I always look at that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. I think we're going to go a little bit more. I think I'm going to jack it up a little bit more. I'm going to go to 5,000 and go to an f2. How you holding up there, Patrick?
Doing well, thank you.
You're an amazing man. Everybody should have a Patrick. Okay. Yeah, all right. I think I like that. So now we're going to meter for the strobe. So I'll go ahead and turn my strobe on. The nice thing about the wireless system is I can control the flash right from the trigger. So I don't have to, once I have it in place, I don't have to do anything, you know. I could do everything from here. And so again, I'm a meter guy, so I'm gonna switch my mode to flash on the trigger. Make sure I've got the right ISO. And then I'm going to do a meter reading on the flash. You're good where you are, sir. And we need to crank this guy up. So on the FJ wireless system, you can either go between decimal or fractions. I like working in the decimal for a couple of reasons. The decimals are broken into 1/10 stop increments. And so between each whole number, there are 10 1/10ths. And that perfectly aligns with my meter. So if I'm taking a meter reading and it's over that stop, like an F5.6, or in 6/10ths, I know exactly how much I'll set. 6 more tenths, right? Literally. So that's why I prefer the digital. So We're going to crank this guy up because, like I said, one of the things about working with high-speed sync is you will be pushing the limits of your speed light or your flash. And so we are at a 7.3. So we're kind of, let's see, full power, half power. We're at a quarter power. I'm going to go up to half power. So my power right now is at 8.4. Got a question?
No, I was just looking. I knew you were gonna have it way up because you're shooting at 5,000.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I need to crank up a fair amount of power out of this right now. And I may need to get a little bit closer, but we're going to do a test shot here and take a look. That's great, Patrick. So we're on high-speed sync, power set, aperture set, ISO is set. Let's take a shot. Yeah. Let's do that shot one more time. Bring your chin down just a little bit. Nice. Okay. Stay right there. I'm going to go back. I'm going to go backwards here for just a quick second. I'm taking it out of high-speed sync mode so you can see what that looks like. So let's say if you're not in high-speed sync, I'm sorry, I'm going blind. If you're not in high-speed sync and you're in front curtain sync and this limits me, I'm just going to go ahead and put this thing in a TTL mode.
Put in the F8 or something.
Yeah, I'm actually just going to put this system into a TTL mode for now and let it do the thinking. Okay, let's do this. This way you have a little something to compare against, right? Okay. I think we got it, folks. Does anybody have any questions before we go inside? Yeah.
Could you go over one more time how you use the flash setting on the meter to get the reading?
How I read it? Okay. So she was asking about how I'm using the meter to read the flash. Light meters read light, and you can either read available light. Patrick, if you want to get out of there, you're good because we're done.
What to set the flash, because it's not
Right. So you set the ISO to the same as your camera, right? And you set the shutter speed to what you want to shoot at, right? Remember, your shutter speed is what controls your available light. And I hit the test button on the trigger, right? It sends a wireless signal to pop the flash, as you see, right? I hit this little button on the side. I face the meter towards the source of the light from where the subject at. So in this case, I was facing it here from the point of his face towards the flash. And I hit the test button. It's going to give me an f-stop number. That f-stop number is what's telling me the power, essentially. So let's just say, for instance, I wanted f4, right? That's what I want. Because you always start from the position of what do you desire to do? What's your vision? I want an f4 because I want a shallow depth of field. What if this gave me a 5.6? What if the meter says 5.6? What do I do? No. But I'm glad you said that. He just said make a change in your camera settings. Right? No, because now if you're making a change in your camera settings, you're changing your vision. Change the power of the flash. 5.6 is one stop greater than f4. Right? So make an adjustment in the power. If I want f4 and it's reading 5.6, that's one full stop. Again, why I like using the digital decimal system. 5.6 to f4 in 1/10 stop increments is 10 1/10 stop increments. The digital meter says that. And I can literally just go down in my power 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 10, and then, so I don't have to sit here and keep shooting and, trying to figure out what the best exposure is. I don't want to do that. I want to spend my time mostly figuring out composition. Fortunately, I've gotten to know Patrick, but if we just met for the first time, I'd probably spend a little time talking to him, finding about something about him, right? And then this way I don't have to worry about my exposure. So another reason why I like the meter.
High-speed sync will work with multiple, like if you added a second light, you could do.
Absolutely, you can do multiple lights. For simplicity reasons, I brought one out. But yes, I could certainly brought a hair light in, or maybe a little light on the floor. You know, it all depends on the look. Maybe you had multiple people, you need 2 lights.
Will it work if you have a mix of lights from like different brands?
No. No, a high-speed sync in TTL is brand specific, so you wouldn't be able to mix in, say, a Profoto or a Godox and a Westcott and get that. You could do that manually. You can mix those manually, but you wouldn't be able to mix them and get TTL or high-speed sync. Okay, so here's an image that has no definition in the sky, right? Or very little. And then there's your 2000th of a second. And then here's us adding flash, right? So a little bit more saturation in the sky. You got definition there, whereas before here, almost nothing up there, right?
Your white balance don't play.
White balance is on flash. Again, I asked that you guys test your own camera systems. My experience with my Sony a7 III when I put it on daylight while I'm using flash outside is that it tends to be a little cooler. So, and I've already expressed my lack of interest in doing post work, so I don't want to have to spend a lot of time warming it up. So, but yeah, pretty simple technique. Didn't take very long to set up, right? That's correct. That's correct. Right, when the sun came out from behind the clouds, we lost a little bit of the cloud definition. I had to go from 2000 to 4000. So this is 1/4000th of a second at f2.8, ISO 100. White balance is flash, right? I'm using that single light to the left to light them. So essentially he's asking, you know, what happens if you have to make changes in the power output from one exposure to the next? I remeter. I don't do guesswork, I mean, you know. It's a portrait, I have the time, you know. If it was a wedding and, you know, tick, 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 you know, got to get the bride back inside, you know, I probably would then guess. But if you got the time, remeter, you know, be accurate. I mean, what did I take? 5 pictures, right? So better to be accurate, take an extra step. It doesn't really take much to remeter, you know. Obviously, if you're going to be using flash, you need a light meter, right? Because the reflective meters in your cameras only read ambient light. So if you don't have that, it's probably a good idea to invest in a small light meter. The one I use is the L Sekonic 308. It's the least expensive meter that Sekonic makes. It's everything I needed to do, right? It gives me available, it gives me flash, I can do reflective, I can do incident. So, and what is that? Less than 200 for your pricing. So it'll give you accuracy all the time, you know. So, like if I wanted to, I could bring this into post, right? And then kind of maybe kick up the saturation a little bit more, you know, if that's what you want to do, right? And more than likely, most people would do that just to kind of make those blues a little bit more punchier. But you know that, you know, versus, you know, this plain, you know, flat saturation is a lot better. And if we had more cloud definition, it's a lot more dramatic, right? It's a lot more dramatic when you're doing with the clouds. So, like when I was testing it earlier, that's what the cloud definition was giving me. But then we lost it. So that happens sometimes, right? But I think that overall, you know, I was pretty happy with that, you know, for a high-speed sync situation. You know, the idea is to be able to use flash outside and get ambient light at the same time. And it's a situation you guys find yourself in all the time, right? So that's 4,000. 1/4000th of a second F2 actually. I opened it up to 2. Yeah. Just because, again, we were dealing with all that structure. Like, that's not terrible, the background, right? It's a lot better than what we saw outside. I mean, but that's what, again, you guys are sometimes faced with that situation, right? You're told, this is where we're shooting. So what do, you know? Go to a shallow depth of field so you don't know that that's, man-made structure and it's not overwhelming the background. It's the other reason why I wanted to put the tall grasses in front. It adds an element of three-dimensionality. So, remeter. I don't do guesswork. I know that there's been kind of an abandonment of it, but if you're doing flash photography, it's essential. It's essential. You can get away with it if you're doing available light only, but I suspect that everybody here uses flash at some point in time. So, well, the shutter speed only controls your available light.
Well, that's what I thought.
Right, but because of high-speed sync, right, it's not just giving you that one pop, it's giving you this very quick.
But I think my problem was,
If you're a Fuji or a Nikon shooter, you want to go into the sync setting menu and you want to choose auto FP as in focal plane, in order to enable high-speed sync. If you're a Canon or a Sony shooter, by enabling the high-speed sync on the trigger, it will allow the camera to automatically go in. Yeah. Does anybody have any other questions? Any? Patrick wanted to share something with you. Again, everybody should have a Patrick. Everybody should have a Patrick. He's been fantastic.
All right, really quickly.
But he did something that I think you probably deal with this.
You'll run
This doesn't work.
to do the couple of test shots that you saw without the hat, okay? Up in this area here, the crowd was getting bigger and bigger with students want to watch the photographer.
They're back there.
Work. So they said to Ruben, let's go sit down in the shade and they will go away. Okay? That's important to know. If you get a crowd in your photo, stop the shoot, clear the area, they'll disappear because now they're not entertained anymore. And it'll only take a minute or two.
He was right. So there was the practice shot. You could see the kids in the background.
And this is just the start of the crowd. Okay? It was all lined up along here.
I thought you meant us
All
first.
lined up,
No, right before you guys went out there.
and they left.
I love it.
I thought those were the little
Stop
angels
the
on your
entertainment.
Well, they thought there was a real movie star out there. I think that was.
If you guys have any more questions, I'm going to be over here, obviously, by the gear. Feel free to come over. I hope this was helpful, and thank you very much.
Thank you.